through the situation. Sometimes you don't realize how much power you have, and if you are not careful, you can end up destroying everything in your path. Look at alternatives around this issue. They are there if you just look at other ways to solve the problem. So, okay. Sometimes you do not realize how much power you have. This is true, so it's time for me to really, tap into that, tap into my power. Because I don't want to make mistakes and jeopardize what I've created and how hard I've worked for it. And there are other solutions. So I need to look at my options and really look to self for power and strength because it's all I have it. It's within me. Okay, sacred knowledge. I'm getting tired. I didn't really pull too many cards. Should have just did like three cards. All right. In the Dreamtime, the young black swan spent many hours a day preening himself to ensure that his handsome black feathers were shiny and bright. All the other swans thought him vain and had no time for him, so his life was somewhat lonely. Oh, this is the wrong page. The page before it. The little black snake. The little black snake was strong-headed and didn't like to listen to what his mother said, and would often wander off on his own to explore the bush. As the days started to get cooler, he found it was getting harder to find the energy to make it home at night. One cool winter's day, when the sun didn't warm the ground until early afternoon, he wandered further from home than he had ever gone before. Before he realized it, the sun was setting and the ground was cold, making it hard for him to slither back to his mom and siblings. As the night got darker and colder, he curled up to try and keep his warmth and to hide from the nighttime predators. All night he stayed awake, listening for noises, becoming more and more afraid until finally morning arrived, and the sun poked over the horizon, warming his body and giving him strength again. With a warmed body and lots of energy, he slithered quickly back to his mom, who had been waiting for him all night. He promised his mom to listen to her in the future and to never go too far away from home again. So the message here is sometimes we just run out of energy before we get the day's work done. It's probably time for you to tighten up on your time management skills and decide what can be left until the next day. Not everything has to be done today, but you have placed that expectation on yourself and are finding it more difficult each day. Give yourself a break and get real about what is important and what can wait until tomorrow. That's important. That's an important statement. Time management is very important because I have a lot of things I need to do and I need to manage it. All right, sound of spirit. What's the sound of spirit say? On the Dreamtime, the trees spoke as we do today. They had their own language and could easily talk to each other. And this was important because when the bad weather would come, trees would whisper to each other and warn of the impending weather. Some trees liked to reach high in the sky and would grow tall to reach for the sun's warmth, whilst others liked the shade under the protection of the big tall trees. There was a small group of younger trees who were always competing against each other to grow the biggest, tallest, and strongest. Sometimes the competition to grow was so fierce that they would neglect their duties to pass on messages to the other trees. One day, whilst they were busy growing and competing, they all neglected to pass on the message of a big storm that was heading in their direction. When the storm came, all the little flowers who depended on the protection of the large, tall trees did not have time to close and protect themselves. As a result, all the little flowers died and were never able to grow again, and from then on, the trees took their responsibilities seriously to protect the smaller flowers. Don't trust Chinese whisperers. This is the message. What you are hearing is not what was originally said, and others have added their own version and biases to the story. It's not intentional, but what you need to do is get the information and the truth directly from the source. When you take this step, you will be relieved to find that things are not quite as bad as you thought. All right. So don't trust everybody. Get the message from the source. All right. Thirsty Earth. Once there was a greedy frog, and he liked to take things that other animals needed. One day he decided to collect all the water from the creek and store it in his giant mouth, leaving all the other animals with nothing to sustain themselves throughout the hot summer. As the animals in the land got thirstier through the heat of the hot, dry summer, they got together to beg him to release the water from his giant mouth, but they got no reply as his mouth was so full that he couldn't talk. One day as the animals were dehydrated and close to death, suddenly the frog started to shudder and then began to hiccup. With the next hiccup, he could no longer hold the water in his giant mouth anymore, and the water came rushing out, filling the creek and bringing life back into the bush again. The frog quietly hopped away and was never seen again. Life is very busy for you, and sometimes you can burn the candle at both ends for too long, so that it eventually burns to the center and causes you pain, as the flames scorch your fingers. Common sense says blow one end of the candle out to make it easier to manage, or better still, extinguish the candle altogether. Time to make sensible decisions about your health, or you may quickly find yourself burned out with very little energy to sustain the flame. Patience. When the wind was created, he loved his ability to fly around the bush, listening to all the animals' voices in the bush. After some time of hearing all the voices, he began to feel upset with the nasty things that the animals would say about each other. He moved from the bush to the desert and to the ocean, but wherever he went, it was the same, more animals saying cruel things to each other. After returning to the desert, he realized that nothing would ever change. This made him very mad, and in his anger, he started to turn around in circles, eventually beginning to spin wildly, with the dust being thrown into the air and the dirt and rocks on the ground scattering in all directions. After a while, he got tired and just stopped spinning. In his exhaustion, he realized that he was no longer angry, but that he felt good from this. Over time, the wind became to accept that when he got upset, he would simply spin himself round and round until all his anger and energy had been spent. Then he would just stop and move on until the next time he became upset. Life feels out of control right now, and it's hard to see the light through the dust. You continually turn yourself inside out, trying to find ways to deal with your situation. You are so focused on this situation that you don't realize that sometimes it's not your situation to control. Hand the situation over to the person who is truly in control of it and just simply step back. So every battle is not yours to take on. Sometimes it's best to let go and let someone else handle it. It's not your battle to fight. Silence. A long time ago, when the emu was created, he was given a voice. However, the emu loved to talk and had an opinion on everything, and sometimes was very greedy with his food. After some time, the other animals began to tire of the emu's constant chatter and his habit of eating more than his share of the food. He was becoming annoying to everyone. All the animals got together and decided to trick him. The animals gathered around and talked about the bush plums they had found on a tree in a nearby gully, hoping the emu would go and eat all the bush plum and get sick from the tummy ache, which would teach him a lesson for being greedy. The emu went in search of the bush plums, and when he found the bountiful tree, he was delighted by the amount of beautiful plums he would be able to have all to himself. He swallowed his first plum, and to his honor the plum got stuck in his throat. He tried and tried to either swallow the plum or spit it out, but all to no avail. When he returned to the other animals, he could no longer speak, and could only make gulping sounds. And because he could no longer speak, he spent the rest of his time wandering the bush, searching for ways to get his voice back. This is the time to keep your opinions to yourself, as no good will come from gossip, and it will only harm others. No matter how much you want to share your secret or pass on information to another source, it will only reflect badly on you, regardless of the truth behind your opinion. This is one time where you need to just let go and move on. That's a powerful statement right there. Even if my opinion is right, even if the things that I think I'm saying are helpful, no good will come from me. Not necessarily gossiping, but I guess gossiping, because it will only harm others. So the best thing to do is to let go and move on. Rebirth. If that makes sense. After that, there's rebirth. Wow, it's like 45 minutes. Alright, 58. So I'm just going to go to the message. This is definitely a story about the caterpillar. One day the caterpillar wakes feeling a little different and realizes that wings are beginning to grow on his back. At first he was very afraid, but then realizes that as his beautiful wings were stretched, he would be able to fly and see the world. So it's time for you to stretch your wings. You like the comfort of what you know, and change can be challenging for you, but sometimes that can be used as an excuse to never take a chance. It's time to leave the comfort of your nest and make a move. The benefits of the change you are contemplating outweighs the challenges. So just make the move. Just make the move. All right. Women's wisdom. Got 3 more cards to go. I didn't think this was going to take an hour, but... Alright. So this story is about the grandmother talks softly to her granddaughter as she gently holds her in a loving embrace. The old woman sees the special qualities in her granddaughter, the qualities that are needed for her to pass down the knowledge and wisdom which is passed down by her grandmother. She shares Dreamtime stories with her granddaughter, helping her to understand the lore that is embedded in the stories. As the years pass by, the older woman imparts her herbal knowledge to her granddaughter. She becomes confident in her abilities to heal the family when they are sick. She learns to develop her intuition, which increases the depth of her wisdom, and in time will become the wise woman of the family. Eventually, the old woman says her final goodbyes to this world and passes to her next life, knowing that the well-being of the family will be in the safe hands of the new wise woman, her beloved granddaughter. Sometimes it's easy to think that everyone else seems to be the expert in your life, and it gets confusing as you feel obligated to listen to everyone. On some occasions, there are people whom you should trust, and there is someone who is advising you at the moment that is worth listening to. They are knowledgeable regarding this subject and also have your best interest at heart. So it's a good time to listen to receive that woman's wisdom. Inner quiet. Okay. Back in the beginning of time, there's a huge rock in the middle of the desert. The rock was born from the ground over millions of years, and during this time, the sun and the rain had sculptured amazing shapes into him. And if you look closely, you could see the caves and shelters that have been forged through the millenniums. In the desert where the rock lived, the days were burning hot, and nights were freezing cold. He liked the heat during the day, but he often wished he could also be warm during the cold desert nights. As the rock had no voice, he could only watch as the plants began to grow, then animals started to evolve, and eventually people were born into this land. He watched for thousands of years as people passed him. Then one day a young boy whose family had become sick. On their way, Walkabout came to the rock in search of shelter. After a short time, the young boy found a small hole in the rock, and after exploring it, Father found a cave which could offer his family